to lecture 3.5, 30 Years War. Now, again, this is going to be our last lecture. I have intentionally made this one short, so it won't be too long. My hope is that by making some of these shorter, if you need to go back and rewatch them or rewind a little bit to complete notes, that it isn't going to take you an hour or 2 hours at a time to go through each lecture. So with this one, we're going to talk about the 30 Years' War that is going to really ravage Europe during the 17th century. And it's kind of an awkward place to stop, other than the fact that once we get to the end of this lecture, you'll see that Europe, as we see it today, is starting to form. But had we been able to really complete the course, we would have gone further than this. So we are leaving a lot of stuff out. Now, the 30 Years' War actually lasted for 30 years, 1618 to 1648. And this is a continental war. So this is what's happening in mainland Europe. And it begins as a local conflict in the Holy Roman Empire, but it will expand to other countries at each phase. Now, the Peace of Augsburg was signed in 1555, and it stated that whoever reigns in each province, whoever reigns, it would be his religion that the people would follow. It only allowed for Catholicism or Lutheranism. They could not have Calvinism, and they did not want Calvinism to spread. And this is what's happening in the Holy Roman Empire. Remember, it is a collection of territories and principalities, and it's the Holy Roman Emperor who kind of oversees this, the religion in this territory. But when you have the Protestant Reformation, you have a lot of these princes and dukes who want to convert to Protestantism and really forego the relationship with the Catholic Church. Now, Bohemia, which is the modern-day Czech Republic, will cause some conflict because of the ruler's religion. It did not match with the majority of the population. So again, the Peace of Augsburg says that if the ruler is Catholic, the people are Catholic. If the ruler is Lutheran, the people are Lutheran. And there's going to be 4 phases of this war. You're going to have the Bohemia phase, the Danish, the Swedish, and the French. And we're going to walk through all 4 of the phases. Now, the Bohemian phase is purely a local conflict. And again, with each phase, you're going to have more countries involved. Now, before we move in to the beginning of the war, I wanted to show you a quick map of the religions in 1600. And you'll notice that, especially in the Holy Roman Empire, there's a good mix of Lutheran. You're going to have some Calvinism there, and then you're going to have some Roman Catholic, and Roman Catholic mixed with Protestant minorities. And so it's not this territory where everyone either believes in Catholicism or Lutheranism. It's very diverse. So I want you to understand that, especially when you're talking about the Holy Roman Empire here. Now, the Bohemian phase. The Catholic Habsburgs, which this is a ruling family, Emperor Rudolf, he's a Catholic Habsburg, he gave the population more tolerance in their religion in 1609. Basically, he lets the population decide each person what religion they want to follow. However, the next leader, Ferdinand II, he's going to become king in 1617, and he will revoke that toleration. Ferdinand was a Jesuit, and he had no interest in being tolerant of Protestants, and he begins actually persecuting them. Protestant chapels were closed and limits were put on their worship. And this conflict will really come to a head with the Defenestration of Prague in 1618. Now, what's happening here is you have an assembly of Protestant protectors who were called into Prague in response to the loss of their religious rights. So basically, you have Protestants gathering to talk about how they're going to deal with this revoking of their religious rights. During the assembly, while these Protestant leaders are meeting, 3 imperial agents were thrown out the window. So you have these imperial agents that arrive at the meeting. They work for the Holy Roman Emperor, who is Catholic, and the Protestants basically throw them out the window. And it is known that it was a 70-foot drop. Now, the men survived by falling onto a pile of manure. So even though they didn't die, this is quite embarrassing for the Catholic Emperor, Holy Roman Emperor. And this is going to lead the Protestants to release the Apology of the Bohemian States. Now, this is the guys who physically pushed the regents out the window, and they offer an apology. They don't deny doing this, throwing them out the window. However, they try to justify their actions in this apology. They will lay blame on Catholic Jesuits who are interfering with their local politics. They also explained that Rudolf granted them concessions prior and that Frederick caused problems by revoking that toleration. They did not blame the king, however, but those around him. In 1619, the Holy Roman Emperor dies and a new one needs to be elected. Now, Ferdinand II, the gentleman who is King of Bohemia, he gets himself elected as Holy Roman Emperor. Remember, he's a Jesuit and a very devout Catholic. And Bohemia is strongly Protestant. Now, in response to this, Bohemians rebel and refuse to accept Ferdinand as their king. And the Bohemians are actually going to choose Frederick V as their own king. And Frederick is a Calvinist. And this is where you have the war really begin. Now, Frederick was a bad choice for the Protestants. He was really young, and he did not have a good army or sufficient funds. And the big question will become, who is going to be able to win in a battle? Frederick nor Ferdinand had very large armies. Ferdinand's cousin, however, was the King of Spain. And so Ferdinand will get the help from Spain to defeat Frederick. Now, Ferdinand decided to take swift action against the Protestant rebels, and this is going to lead to the Battle of White Mountain in 1620. The Spanish army is the one who's fighting here on Ferdinand's behalf, and they completely crush Frederick and the rebels. And Frederick is forced to flee, and this strengthens Ferdinand's hand. So at this point, Ferdinand has defeated Frederick, and he is now seen as the ruler in Bohemia, and he is the Holy Roman Emperor. Now in 1625, King Christian IV, who is king of Denmark and a Lutheran, will respond by invading territory controlled by the emperor. And he is doing this because he wants to help the Lutherans against the emperor. And it's going to start getting political here. It's not just going to be about religion. Now, Christian did not get the support from other rulers that he thought he would, and he ends up having to retreat. So Christian believed that, again, he's Lutheran, and if he invaded, other Lutheran kings and princes would come to his aid and bring their own armies, and this doesn't happen. Now, this leads to Ferdinand issuing the Edict of Restitution in 1629, and he does this because he believes that he has the upper hand. However, he takes it too far with this edict. The Edict of Restitution heavily censored Protestant books in the Holy Roman Empire, and that wasn't really the problem. The problem that these Catholic emperors and kings will have a problem with is that he starts to reclaim land that had been in Protestant hands since the Peace of Augsburg. Now, again, this act is going to anger a lot of Catholic princes because they see this as a power grab, and this is where it starts getting political. It's not just about being Lutheran or Catholic. Now you have Catholics frustrated at Catholics because Ferdinand's actions here seem like a power grab. And people will start questioning Ferdinand's strategy. Now in 1629, a turning point is going to happen, and you're going to have older factions of Catholics and Protestants start to break down. And you're not just going to have Catholics supporting Catholics and Protestants supporting Protestants. Now the Swedish phase, this is led by King Gustavus Adolphus, and he decides to enter the war by invading the Holy Roman Empire. He is Lutheran, and he supports the Protestant cause, but he also wants to gain territory, again, more political. He wins a decisive victory against the Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand at the Battle of Breitenfeld in 1631. Adolphus is successful because he also had support from France, so they're giving him financial support. Now, France was Catholic. Remember, Gustavus is Lutheran. But France aided him because the Protestant cause would weaken the Habsburgs. The French there were Habsburgs in France, there were Bourbons in France, which is another ruling family. And at this point, the Bourbons want to weaken the Habsburgs, even though they're both Catholic. Now, another thing to know is that the Habsburgs at this point were the most powerful European family and controlled land all over Europe. And so they're going to have land in the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, Austria, Netherlands, etc. Now, Adolphus is successful during the Swedish phase, but he will die on the battlefield at the Battle of Lutzen in 1632. And this ends Sweden's active leadership in the war. Now, the last phase will see France enter in the war directly, fighting against the Habsburgs. So the French phase. In 1635, the French enter the war directly on the side of the anti-imperial forces, so directly against the Habsburgs. For the remainder of the war, it was a war between the Habsburgs and the Bourbons. These are both family dynasties, and the remainder of the war is all fought in Germany. What started as a religious war becomes a political and economic war. So this is very much the political and economic phase. And this is the most destructive phase of the war, especially for Germany. Now, the reason why it becomes so destructive is you have these big giant armies on both sides that are coming in to Germany, and they're bringing disease with them. They're also occupying these countrysides and these cities. The men on both sides will take and plunder for their food. They were also known to rape or kill people, and this led to total destruction in parts of Germany. There's going to be famine and starvation that's going to happen because of this, because people aren't able to produce their crops like they would. And it has been estimated that during this phase, the French phase, 1/3 of the population was gone after the war in Germany. So 1/3 of the German population. And most of the people in this 1/3 were civilians and not soldiers. Now, the war was also a war with propaganda. People were printing books, engravings, pamphlets that showed how terrible the war was. So you start seeing this mass consumption of war and policy, and you start seeing the public actually being involved and having an opinion on what's happening. And there were also accounts that people actually, because of the famine, resorted to cannibalism when they had nothing to eat. And so this, again, is the most destructive phase. Now, this is the last phase of the war. And it will take time, but the people involved will start negotiations. And in 1648, you have the Peace of Westphalia. And again, this took a number of years to negotiate. It will effectively end the war, but it also is going to lead to the end of the Holy Roman Empire. It made all semi-autonomous regions of the empire free from the Holy Roman Emperor. It's going to create the countries of Switzerland and the Dutch Republic. And it's going to change the nature of politics in Europe. After the Peace of Westphalia, countries will start fighting more for national interest over their religion. And so this is one of the first times you see this nationalism. We've talked all through the course how people would think of themselves as being from a village or being somebody's son or as a specific religion. Here at this point, you're going to have people start saying that they're English, that they're French, and that's more common, and they're going to fight for those causes. They're Italian, they're Swedish, and it changes, and that's where we get these ideas that we have today and this nationalism that we identify with our country. Now, as a result of the Peace of Westphalia, you're going to have Central and Eastern Europe start to decline, and the power will shift in Europe to the Atlantic regions, France, Netherlands, and England. And this is where we will actually end. Now, the next slide is Europe after the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. And one of the things I want you to notice is that at this point in 1648, it is starting to take shape, and it's starting to look more like it looks to us today, Europe. And so this is where I'll stop. Again, if you have any questions, please email me. I will put the finals up as soon as I can. And I hate that we had to end this way. I hope all of you are staying well, and hopefully you've had a good remainder of the semester, even though this all kind of sucks and is horrible. So stay well, and let me know if you have anything or you need help with anything.